This grand summary and conclusion will be about the comparison with the Satipatthana Mula, internal coherence of the material, comparison with other suttas, and a grand conclusion. And in comparing with the Satipatthana Mula, we saw that there were many additional exercises in the Pali Kayanupasana and Dhammanupasana. And the first part of the Pali refrain, contemplating internally, externally, and both, is in the definition of the Mula. And there's no vipassana in the refrain of the Mula, although paradoxically there is a paragraph on the attainment of arahantship. There is only vipassana in the Dhammanupasana of the Mula. Then looking at the internal coherence of the material, the question arises on how to contemplate the arising and vanishing of body parts and corpses in terms of abhidhamma, ultimate realities. It is not possible. It is only possible through imagination and manipulation of the visualization that we created with your own mind. You also saw that there's a redundancy of the refrain and causal investigation in Dhammanupasana, right? And there's actually no hard and fast line drawn between concept and ultimate reality in all the exercises that are found in the Satipatthana Sutta, as well as in other suttas in the Pali Nikayas. For vipassana contemplation, sankharas are not restricted to form, citta and cetasika, but include anything that has a nature of arising and vanishing. Right? Includes thoughts, ideas, perceptions, assumptions, expectations, hopes, and so forth. Comparison with other suttas, we saw that sati has a broad range of applications based on its root meaning, awareness of a past object. Sati thus covers remembering, recollecting, reminding, looking back at an immediate past object. Sati is not panya, although a lot of people tend to confuse sati with panya, but it is a necessary condition for it. It is a groundwork for panya. Sometimes I like to use the simile of a research assistant and a research analyst. The job of a research assistant is to go around distributing forms, just like what Brother Panya did this morning. Distribution forms for what? Feedback, right? That's the job of a research assistant. Distributing forms, collecting the information. But the research assistant would not know how to interpret the data. Yeah, it's the job of the research analyst. The research analyst has got his own background knowledge, and it is his own theory, his own methodology to interpret the data, right? But the research analyst cannot work without the research assistant. The research assistant has got to go and collect all the data for him before he can start to interpret it. So in the same way, sati and panya works like that. Sati has to collect all the information first and then remember it. Right? When it remembers it long enough, it will be filed under sanya. It becomes a conditioned perception. And that sanya is working at the back of panya, which is the research assistant, research analyst. And then panya sees the whole picture and links everything together. Right? So sati brings the composed mind to be aware of an object that has just arisen so that panya can discern its nature and conditionality. Again, I said that the mind, the citta, is composed of many mental states, many different departments, and each one has its own job. And all these departments, all these mental states arise simultaneously with the citta. Right? It's not a linear process, not necessarily a linear process. It's a simultaneous process. So the job of sati is to bring the past object, whether it's a distant past, intermediate past, or immediate past object, to the attention of the citta. And then the other department, sanya, will put in its background knowledge, and panya will verify according to experiential reality. Right? That's how it works. Now, pajanati, which you have been chanting so often, is the verb of panya. And it ranges from just bare acknowledgement of an object. For example, when you remember or are mindful that you are breathing, then you begin to know that it's a long breath or a short breath, right? And then when you have a mind with lust, you know that there's a mind with lust. So these are just bare acknowledgement of what's happening, identifying objects. But it can also mean having an intellectual understanding of the object. Intellectual understanding based on your sanya. You know, your sati has already collected information and filed it under sanya. So sanya will tell you, hey, everything is anicca, dukkha, anatta. So when you look at something, you know, you impose that perception onto your viewpoint. All right, so that's an intellectual understanding, but that's not insight yet. The profound insight will come after many events of seeing things, of verifying things according to the information that you have gathered. Then one fine day will dawn upon you, eureka, it's true, everything is impermanent. And then there can be a shift of your transformation of your consciousness, and then your attitude towards the world changes dramatically. There is one simile that the Buddha gave in the suttas. He talks about, there are two similes actually. One is about the carpenter who makes use of an adze. It is sort of an axe, okay, with a wooden handle. As he uses it, after many months and many years, then the mark of his fingers become apparent. Initially there were no marks, but nowadays it's different. Nowadays when you go and buy a tool, a hammer for example, the finger marks are already there. Yeah. But in those old days it was not like that. It was just a piece of wood. But if you use it again and again and again, then eventually the marks will form, right? When did it start to form? Can anyone, precisely determine the time when it started to form? It's impossible. So it's the same with panya. Panya grows in that way. You do it first with bare acknowledgement and intellectual understanding, and then as it grows, then one day it will become apparent. And even more striking simile is that of the rope. In the old days, they used to sail the 7 oceans, and they had to stop sailing during the monsoons, right? Not so during the monsoons, what they would do is they would just tie up the ships to the pier, and with a rope, and then the rope, after being tied and exposed to the elements for so long, it will start to fray, right? Fray. Then one fine day, it cannot take the tensile strength, the tensile pulling anymore. It will just snap. Okay, that's how awakening works. You work slowly, and you don't know when. One fine day, you just snap, and enlightenment occurs, awakening occurs. So awakening is both gradual and sudden. It's gradual because it's accumulative, right? And it's sudden because finally, when it's fully matured, there is a sudden breakthrough and a transformation of consciousness. Now, according to Satipatthana Sutta, perception or sanya arises first, followed by knowledge or jnana. So this is what I've been describing. You start off with sati, collecting the knowledge, the information, and then it is filed up in sanya. Sanya works in the background. It gives the encoding to panya to piece things together, and then when the time is right, panya will actually arise, intuitive panya. Now, clear knowing is to be applied to all 4 satipatthanas, not just bodily activities, as found in Kayanupassana, the section on clear knowing. Why is it there? Ajahn Sujato contends that it should not be there in the first place, because in the gradual training templates, postures and clear knowing precede meditation proper and should not be included in Kayanupassana. The other prerequisite for practice of the Satipatthana is having subdued longing and dejection. This is equivalent to sense restraint in the gradual training templates. Now you may not know what the gradual training template is unless you have been in SBS. In SBS, this is our guide, the gradual training template. There are many versions of the gradual training template found throughout the Digha Nikaya and Majjhima Nikaya, and in some of the other Nikayas, Samyutta and Anguttara. But this is the one that I like best. This one was discoursed by the Buddha because an accountant by the name of Ganaka Moggallana asked the Buddha, he says, Master Gautama, we professionals, when we train our apprentices, we do so in a very structured way, step by step. Do you also have a similar system for your disciples? And then the Buddha said yes. And he outlined this step. The first one is to be virtuous in the moral precepts. After a disciple has mastered this, he will teach him the next step, which is guarding the doors of the sense faculty. What does this mean? This means when the eye sees a form, one guards the eye faculty by not grasping at its signs and features. Due to the failure of not guarding the eye faculty, then the mind will be overwhelmed or assailed by longing and dejection in regard to the world. Okay, so this is what I said. This longing and having subdued longing and dejection in regard to the world is actually part of the gradual training. And this is step number 2, guarding the doors of the senses. The doors of the senses does not only mean the 5 senses, it means the mind as well. So if an idea arises in your mind, you must be able to have enough mindfulness to grasp the initial thought, so that you do not grasp at the idea without fully processing it, without first putting it to the bar test. The third is moderation in eating. Fourth is devotion to wakefulness. Fifth is mindfulness and clear knowing. And 6 is resorting to seclusion. 7 is abandoning the 5 hindrances. And the 8 is developing the jhanas. So this is a step-by-step process that the Buddha encourages his monks and nuns to do. Right? This is the sort of a default template. And there are, of course, variations according to individuals. But by default, this is the Buddha's training sequence. So here you see that guarding the doors of the senses and mindfulness and clear knowing here, number 5, is just part of the gradual training. And the meditation proper occurs only from number 6 onwards. Right? After you have mastered mindfulness and clear knowing in the sense of knowing your feelings, thoughts and perceptions as they arise, persist and go away, then only can you actually control your mind, right? If you cannot catch the intentions, you'll be lost in your thoughts before you know it. That's Ajahn Sujato's contention, that these 2 elements, postures and clear knowing, should not be part of the Kayanupasana. And my take is that having subdued longing and dejection in regard to the world is equivalent to guarding the doors of the senses, and it did not necessarily entail that you must have fully abandoned them by attaining the jhanas before you can practice Satipatthana effectively. According to Kayagadasati Sutta, the 14 exercises in Kayanupasana lead to Samadhi. According to Janava Sabha Sutta and Chula Vedala Sutta, the 4 Satipatthanas lead to Samadhi. Although Samatha and Vipassana are not explicitly mentioned in the Satipatthana Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya number 10, their features are there according to other suttas. Now, according to Vibhanga Sutta, which is found in the Satipatthana Samyutta, the establishment of mindfulness means the definition, the formula for the 4 establishments of mindfulness. The development of the establishment of mindfulness means contemplating the nature of arising, of vanishing, and of both. Now, in the refrain, contemplating the nature of arising, vanishing, and both are options. It's followed by an or. Or he contemplates the nature of arising, or he contemplates the nature of vanishing, or he contemplates the nature of both arising and vanishing, right? But in this sutta, there's no or. It seems that you have to do all these 3. You have to contemplate the nature of arising, you have to contemplate the nature of vanishing, and both the nature of arising and vanishing. So this is how you develop the establishment of mindfulness. And the way leading to the development of the establishment of mindfulness is following the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, now piecing all the jigsaw together, what is the grand conclusion? These 4 days of workshop can be summarized in just 4 paragraphs. Practice of the 4 Satipatthanas, supported by the factors 1 to 6 of the Noble Eightfold Path, leads to right samadhi. Based on the samadhi attained, sati and sanya take the lead in contemplating the nature of arising, of vanishing, and of both. This leads to experiential knowledge and vision of sankharas as they had occurred. When such experiential insight reaches maturity, it develops into weariness and detachment, culminating in liberation. Finish. That's the end. Very simple. After all the analysis, eventually that's all you need to do. No matter whether it's authentic or not authentic, that's all you need to do.